Hello everyone, welcome to Hybrid Accounts, and now I'm just going to try to take a look on how to approach direct material variances. All right, what are direct material variances? Simply speaking, when speaking of direct material variances in total, you have to compare actually the actual costs that have been incurred on materials against the cost that you expected to incur. All right, the standard cost for the actual output. So it's just the difference between what output actually costs and what it should have cost in terms of material. By saying what it should have cost, we speak of standard cost, but don't worry about this. I'm just going to show you a very, very short and precise pro forma that will take you through very directly. So just be patient a bit. It can be divided into the following, right? Material variances can be divided into direct material variances can be divided into material price variance as well as material usage variance. What do we mean by this? I could just start with this point here. You know, when speaking of material costs, when speaking of direct material cost, how would we get this? Direct material cost would be equal to the price. You take the price and then you multiply this price by quantity, right? Price by quantity. After multiplying price by quantity, let's say the price is let's say just maybe $4 per unit or maybe per kilogram, $4 per kilogram, and then you multiply by the quantity that is in kilograms actually, you will obtain a cost. So material variances would be attributed due to the difference in prices, but also to the difference in quantities. So that's why we have material price variance, difference due to price, and material usage or material quantity variance, difference in quantity. So that's what you have to make a consideration right here, right? Okay. So I'll have this one, material price variance. Don't worry about this. You just see this in a very short pro forma. Variances is all about pro forma. So it's just the difference between what material actually cost and what it should have cost. We are just going to see this, and it could be obtained using the actual quantity of materials purchased. It really depends when determining this. You can use actual quantity of materials purchased, or you can use the actual quantity of material used. Material purchased, if the variance is determined at the at the start of the period. When we just purchase materials, we just determine the variance. Or you can use the actual quantity of materials used. So it could be materials purchased or materials used if the variance is determined at the end of the period. All right. And so we usually use material purchase. That's the very common practice. And as for the material usage variance, this one now the different prices stay the same, but actually the quantity differs. The actual quantity used and the quantity that we expected to use. So we have to know that, right? And lastly, you can have the variance due to the difference between materials purchased and used. Let's say you're doing the question where materials purchased and used are different. You can have material difference. You can have the material variance due to the difference between materials purchased and the used. You could have it. So I just decided to write it down, right? Yeah. All right, now let's just go to this material variances pro forma. It's very, very important. Direct material variances pro forma. All right. So to obtain material variances, as I said, you have quantity on one row and the price. Not this pro forma. You will use it even for complicated variances. So just be very careful here. So I'll write here quantity. I said the cost equals to quantity times price. So quantity and this one is price. Now this is what we do. Be very careful here. You start with actual quantity and then actual price. And after this one, let's say these are the figures, we start with material price variance. So we change the price. So here I had actual price and here I write standard price. So after writing actual and actual, I change the price. This becomes standard price while maintaining the quantity. Quantity of actual, I copy it here, the same actual. I'm done with material price variance. And then now the price stays the same and I change the quantity. So as for price here, I had the standard and I copied here. It remained the standard, but for quantity here, I changed. Here I had actual and now I write here is standard. Actually, we call it standard quantity for actual output. That's why it's written A. SA, but it's actually the standard quantity, but for actual output, not for per unit. For actual output and not for budgeted units, for actual output. We'll see this, don't worry. All right, you take this one times this actual quantity and actual price, you get actual cost, but this actual cost is usually given directly in the question, but it depends. Actual quantity times standard price, you have the cost here, and the standard quantity for actual output times standard price, you have the amount already. So just take the difference. Difference between these two, you would have direct material price variance, and difference between these two, this one and this one, would have direct material usage variance. If you sum them up, you have the total direct material variance. Now, we'll see later on how to know whether this is adverse or favorable in an example. We're just going to see it. Now, in an exam, you would usually need to determine this one, standard quantity for actual output. Most of time, it won't be given. You would have to determine it by yourself, all right? So this is what will follow. Note here. A means actual, S means standard, and SA means standard quantity for actual output. SQA. Now, how do I obtain standard quantity for actual output? It's just as the question states, standard quantity for actual output. So, standard quantity times actual output, just as the question states. Just be careful here. When we speak of standard quantity, you know, standard is linked to the budget. So standard quantity should really be per unit. Do not just take standard, maybe standard quantity for 1,000 units budgeted. You have to divide by 1,000 to obtain per unit. And then you multiply by actual output. Actual output means the product. You know, no students confuse here. Units are not this. Materials can be in units, but also full products can also be in units. So you should note that when we speak of actual output, we mean the full product, not the materials, right? So this is what you have to know, right? And now let's just go to an example and see what we can do. Example now. Product X has a standard direct material cost as follows. 10 kilograms of material Y at 10,000 TZS per kilogram. This is the cost. During the period, 1,000 units of X were manufactured using 11,500 kilograms of material Y, which cost 98 million. Now, up to here, you can know one thing. This is the standard material cost, 10 kilograms of material Y. They just said product X, so we need 10 kilograms per unit of product X. That is the standard quantity per unit. At this cost here, this price, 10,000 TZS per kilogram, that is the standard price. During the period, 1,000 units of X were manufactured. This is the actual output. Using 11,500 kilograms of material. So these were the actual quantity of material used, which cost 98 million. So the cost that we incurred on materials was 98 million. All right, calculate the following. Direct material price variance, direct material usage variance, as well as direct material total variance. Now we go to the solution. Now this is what I prefer. Let's just go to our pro forma. So I'll just go to my pro forma like this, and then we can explain it how we arrive at it, right? So here we are. As I told you before, you would have a line for quantity, a row for quantity, and for price. You start with actual quantity and the actual price, then we change down here. I had actual price, and here I would have a standard price. I change them, but I remain with the quantity as actual. And then I change down here. I had standard price, and I remain with standard price, and then this was actual, and here it becomes standard quantity for actual output. How did I obtain these figures? That's where we are heading. So let's just head and take a look on how we arrived at these figures. So we start now. This is actual quantity. From the question, we are told that 11,500 kilograms of materials were used. So here we presume that materials used equals to materials purchased. So yeah, I will have actual here, but I will also have actual here, right? And then you proceed. We are also given the standard price, right? We are given the standard price, that was 10,000 per kilogram, standard price, but standard price again, here we have it like this, all right? But we are also given the actual material cost using 11,500 kilograms of material, which cost 98 million. So the actual cost means actual quantity times actual price. So this comes directly down here. You have to read the question. This is not the price, we are given the actual cost. All right. So what we are left with is just proceeding to get the figure. Which figure do we need here? This one. We need this figure, standard quantity for actual output. Now, how am I going to obtain this standard quantity for actual output? How am I going to do that? How can you obtain the standard quantity for actual output? Now you can just go and proceed. I just said that to obtain the standard quantity for actual output, you take standard quantity per unit times actual output. Now, what is the standard quantity per unit? It's given here, it's 10 kilograms of material Y per unit of product X. In the actual output itself, we are told that during the period we produced 1,000 units. So I would have to take 10 kilograms per unit and 1,000 units, and I would remain with 10,000 kilograms. And this is what I just used here, standard quantity for actual output, right? So after that, matters become much simpler because all you need to do is just multiply and have your result. For example, here, 11,500 times 10,000, I would have 115 million. 10,000 times 10,000, I would have 100 million, all right? And then you can just determine the differences. So you start here. You take the difference between 98 million and 115 million, and I would have 17 million material price variance because the difference between these two is attributed to the two differences in price because the quantity was the same. So you just need to know whether this variance is favorable or adverse. That's what you have to ask yourself here. All right, so if you consider here, you see that the difference is due to price. How did you obtain this actual price? Actual quantity and actual price equals to this figure here, actual cost. So if you take actual cost, you divide it by actual quantity, you will obtain this actual price. If you take a look here, you find that this in standard, I expected to purchase materials at 10,000 TZS per kilogram, but I ended up purchasing at a much lower cost. So this is good because the actual price has been lower, and so this material price variance would be favorable, right? Now, just understand one thing. By using this pro forma that I'm proposing, you would always be starting with the actual figures and then standard figures. So whenever the left side is less than the right side, it would mean that the actual, for cost, the actual figure is less than the standard. And so if you're dealing with cost variances, that would always be favorable. If you're dealing with revenue variances, that would be adverse. All right, so this is the point you have to note very well. Then you can proceed here. The difference again, 115 million against 100 million. So if you take the difference here, we'll have direct material usage variance, that is 15 million, 115 minus 100. 15 million adverse. Why? But if I told you here, the standard would be the same, standard price is the same, but quantity have actual quantity and the standard quantity for actual output. So these ones are different. What does this mean? From the standard requirement of 10 kilograms per unit, I expected to use 10,000 kilograms to manufacture 1,000 units. But actually, I ended up using 11,500. So I ended up using much more materials than what I expected to use for that same output. So that's why this would mean an adverse direct material usage variance. You should note this very, very well. So if you just need to go directly, as I told you, if the left-hand side is less than the right-hand side, that means actual is less, and you're speaking of cost. But actually it is more. So actual cost is more than this standard cost or expected cost. So this will be adverse. And if you need to know the direct material total variance here, you just add them. So 17 million favorable plus 15 million adverse would have 2 million favorable. Not that this is favorable and this is adverse. So if favorable is given a positive sign, adverse would have a negative sign. So it would be 17 million minus 15. Remaining is 2 million that is favorable. So that's what we have to do here. All right, thank you very much, and until next time.